Hi, and welcome to an episode of the Jet Rails podcast. I'm Robert, your host, and today we're going to be talking about SMS text messages as they relate to e-commerce. For years, there have been some brands that have really done a great job of using SMS as a communication channel with shoppers, as well as a marketing channel. And we're going to dive in a little bit to understand how that's been evolving and even why some brands are choosing SMS as a primary method of communicating with shoppers as opposed to more traditional channels like email. So with no further ado, we've got a great guest with us today. We have Rev from the Voyage team that specializes in SMS. And Rev, would you do the honor of introducing yourself?
Yes, and thank you so much for having me, Robert, today. Very excited to be on the podcast. My name is Rev Reddy. I am the current CEO of Voyage SMS. We provide a full-stack, flexible SMS marketing platform for leading e-commerce brands to engage their customers. And just a little bit about my background. So I was born and bred in Texas, went to Wharton, as well as worked at McKinsey for a year, but quickly found myself obsessed with startups and entrepreneurship. So took those skills and tried to figure out how to build products at scale. Definitely had my share of failures as well as successes, but learned a lot about product in particular. And so I actually joined Voyage when we had a handful of clients and worked very closely with what I call the OG founder, Corey Epstein. He was an ex-marketer at Distilled, which was a direct-to-consumer company. He was actually a co-founder of that. And what he saw early on in 2016, 2017 was that SMS was going to be a predominant channel by which e-commerce brands could engage customers. That vision really sold me on where we could build a scalable platform for these brands that was both turnkey and powerful to do so. So I joined in 2019 and fast forward to today, and we're a much larger team and serving hundreds of brands now in the e-commerce space.
Wow. And I'm going to take you back to the early days. I always love to ask, how did Voyage get its name? Is there a good story behind the name?
There is a good story, and it's very relevant. So Voyage is actually, not only does it sound cool, of course, we jokingly are actually now trying to use the term voyage, which is really relevant because Voyage is basically a proxy for the customer journey. And what's so powerful about our platform is we really think about, okay, where is the customer in their journey and when is the right time and how is it appropriate for a brand to engage that customer in their journey? So that's really what Voyage is. It's, addressing the whole continuum of where the customer is, whether that's top of funnel, whether that's in the intent phase, if they're, browsing the site, whether they're making the purchase and post-purchase. So we believe there's a really powerful word that kind of captures the essence of how a brand should think about engaging with their customer.
That's interesting. And, traditionally, I've thought of email in a lot of different ways. You've got your transactional emails in e-commerce, your order is shipped, or, here's your receipt kind of messages. You think of the marketing emails that you get, letting shoppers know about upcoming sales, new products, just general communications about, content that the brand wants to share that might be valuable to shoppers. But you also have one-on-one communications happening through email for customer service and a variety of different things. Where do you find the text that SMS really fits in this market? Is it a replacement for all other channels, or is it really strong for sort of, one or two areas of communication with shoppers?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think there's probably varying visions and philosophies on where SMS fits into the digital marketing stack. We fundamentally believe for most brands, SMS can be used really across the whole journey and across these different kinds of messages, as you called it. So whether that's your one-time marketing campaigns, announcing a product launch, or promoting a sale, or doing your high-intent drip. So if someone browses the site and you want to do a browse abandon SMS message, or if someone left something in their cart, an abandoned cart SMS, on top of the transactional messages that you talked about, like order shipped, order delivered, what we're seeing is just SMS is so effective in reaching the customer because it is this real-time channel. And then the second part, which you alluded to, is yes, you can use email in these customer service ways, But what better than a very real-time channel that's synchronous and two-way in SMS, where we have integrations with our customer service platforms that you can create a ticket and have this whole conversation where you may have clicked on a link where you left something in your cart, and on that same text phone number thread, you can ask a customer service agent where my order is. So this unified experience is very strong. To answer your question about replacement, I think to some extent it can substitute email, and that's where really allowing the customer sometimes to give a preference on whether they want to hear via email or SMS is sometimes the right answer. But we do believe that it's complementary, and there still is a space for email. There's a lot of dynamics about the cost structure and the intent of email versus SMS that we can get into. But we also believe that there are some brands that could pretty much conduct their whole marketing program over SMS as well. So it depends on the context, depends on kind of what the brand experience is desired from the brand itself. But we have that flexibility to kind of work through those dynamic conditions.
Interesting. And look, I can think of years and years ago in my agency days when I first saw SMS as a communication channel from an agency perspective that we could batch and blast out. We could, okay, it's Friday, the weekend is coming. You want to let folks know about some special at this restaurant, or whatever's going on. It's time to register your kids for this this program at this, whatever it might have been. I don't know. At Little League or something, that there were no shortage of opportunities to engage in that kind of let's just send one big grouping of messages out to one large list. When did this become more manageable in the e-commerce sphere, where you could really do more with it? Because obviously, and I'm sure I'm going to ask you a lot about, just how to do this right, not to upset shoppers, not to annoy them, because I almost want to think that SMS it's still up on a pedestal. That's the place that people still don't want to be annoyed. They'll ignore things in their inbox, and that's not necessarily beeping or alerting at them all day long. But text is still sacrosanct. We don't mess with it too badly. So when did the technology get to the point that merchants could really do this right?
Yeah, and therein lies the opportunity. What you said is text is absolutely sacrosanct. We call it a sacred, intimate channel. So therefore, your SMS program should not fully mirror your email program, where the marginal cost of reaching a customer. And really, when I say marginal cost, there's two costs. There's one is the economic cost. So literally sending a blast to, let's say you have a list of 100,000 subscribers, it's going to effectively cost more than sending an email out to 100,000 subscribers. But also the relationship cost. So upsetting a customer by sending them a text every day. I really can't think of one client where it makes sense for them to send a text every day, maybe a few times a week. But even then, the few times a week, segmentation is so important in this space. And, similar to segmentation in email, segmentation exists in SMS. And to answer your question about when it became, I would say, possible or a little bit more accessible to the e-commerce brand is probably with this two things. One, an increasing shift to mobile behavior where the flow just made sense. So, a big thing we address is list building. How do you build your list in a compliant way quickly and at scale so that you can effectively reach these customers? And unlike email, for SMS, you need very explicit opt-in with strict compliance requirements. This kind of works itself out, though, when you think about it, because effectively only the customers that want to hear from text will get heard by through text, because you can't just text a phone number. The same way when you swipe your credit card at a Square machine, you may get an email. With SMS, you have this explicit opt-in. But I think the shift to mobile has created, when you just look at this opt-in flow, if you're clicking in modal, it pre-populates into text, and then you're signed up for SMS in about 5 seconds without having to type in your email. That's what's been so strong at the e-commerce buying flow. And then now we have some clients where 80% of their traffic is mobile. So this whole flow of interacting with, this app on your phone that's universal, independent of Android or Apple, no gatekeeper. That's what's really pushed the trend towards SMS. Segmentation is going to be a big theme. I'm sure we're going to talk about it more in this podcast, but that's really where we see the value proposition is how do you not tax your subscriber base? And when we talk to the CMOs of large D2C brands, they're aware that text is performing, yet we're still relatively in early days with SMS and e-commerce because we think maybe 35 to 40% only of brands have adopted SMS yet. We believe the number will be 95 to 99%, but what we hear is this nervousness about how do we not, spam our customers and tax them. And we believe segmentation and personalization is the answer to those.
That's interesting. So basically, if you don't want a bunch of angry tweets about why are you texting me?
Yeah, exactly.
Segmentation automation. All right, that makes sense, and I really think that that's what's elevated a lot of the other channels, like whether it's email or push notifications or other things. Even direct mail in some cases where, I've seen some e-commerce brands get back into that and really use their data properly for it. Where they may not be showing up in your inbox, your physical mailbox every week, but when they do, it makes sense. And, there's something to be said for that. We've touched on a little bit about why you were excited to get into this space. Is there a lot of competition? I know that there are some platforms that really look at providing maybe more of an omni-channel flow, that they have a variety of channels that you can schedule communications through, et cetera. Are there a lot of platforms that are going to handle the transactional messages, like letting you know that product is sitting on your doorstep and it's been delivered? And the messages that you want to receive in a timely fashion that are going to handle the different types of communication that Voyage does? Or did you find that the market was still pretty thin on that?
There's definitely a lot of players in the general marketing technology space. And what I would say is a lot of these players were built in a desktop first era. One of our advantages is we came to market still relatively early on, where we've gotten the benefit of learning along the way, but we were built in a mobile first era. So without getting too off track, while we're focused on SMS today, our broader vision is actually message commerce. And that's a key part of your mobile strategy. We're focused on SMS just because it's working so well and you can reach customers, but we don't think of SMS as a feature. We think of it as a core part of your mobile strategy to engage customers and drive revenue. And with this becomes this pressure, and it's part of our DNA to be the most innovative player in the room. And that's where you stand out, is treating SMS not like email and not just leveraging the email functionality towards SMS, which there are players that do that, and they do have efficacy on kind of their segmentation engine and such. But where they may be lacking and what we're strong at is pushing the boundaries of how a customer can actually engage with the brand. So things like conversational commerce at scale. It's a buzzword that's been around for a long time, but really achieving that in the enterprise is tough. And we believe we're building a solution that's not only creating conversions that would otherwise be lost, but creating insane amounts of customer delight, plugging back into that brand experience. And by focusing solely on this mobile first channel, we're able to unleash kind of these new functionalities and features that the market really hasn't seen quite yet. That's coinciding with how consumer behavior is shifting towards this mobile first environment.
That's interesting. You're absolutely right that I've been hearing about conversational commerce for years, and a lot of homes now have some kind of a device that they can talk to, whether it's Alexa or Google or Siri, or I'm setting off everybody's smart devices right now on purpose. That's part of the segment today, but or Cortana, or I don't know, whatever else has been developed. Right. But at the same time, I think that some of those things are, depending on the user, are more niche, where something like SMS is more constant. There are probably a handful of things that I would ask some kind of a smart speaker or smart device on any given day. I'm not necessarily doing a ton of my shopping through it. I know that there are some shoppers that use it pretty religiously. but I don't think that's become a primary channel for most brands. Nor do I personally think it will be in the next few years. Text messages, on the other hand, are pretty interesting. At its core, I think one of the reasons that I like the whole concept of SMS as part of this has to do with open rates. If I told you the percentage of emails that I don't open on a daily basis, it's pretty darn high at this point. And I think we all have probably more than one email address, just so that, when we're almost, forced to sign up for something, that we can have it dumped somewhere that we're not looking at all day long, that maybe we check once a day or at some other more relevant interval. What kind of an open rate do you anticipate when it comes to SMS?
That's what really the key opportunity we saw a few years ago was these declining open and click-through rates with email, where maybe you would get a 15% open rate and then 1 to 3% click-through rate net in email. SMS effectively 99% open rate. Now there is some stuff around deliverability that actually makes having an expert in SMS really beneficial, because it's a lot more complex on the back end, arguably, than email in some cases. But firstly, when you send an SMS, you almost know with a guarantee that that person's going to read it. The click-through rates, even with that, can be anywhere from 20 to 50%. It can be up to 80% if you're using segmentation well. I can tell you a little story of a brand on our platform that was launching a Star Wars product line. And they use keyword segmentation very well, very specific to SMS. So think text Star Wars to 71023, and you'll be the first to hear about this product line. We're not going to tell you when it's going to drop, but you'll be the first to hear. So publish that both offline, whether it's on packaging, as well as online on their website, text keyword, and an email text keyword to 71023. Had a very segmented list, sent out that campaign. 85% click-through rate, 40% conversion. ROAS is 500x. And that kind of playbook that you get with SMS is really not replicable on other channels. Yes, it's more expensive on a per unit cost, but when you see that ROAS, any marketer is kind of very delighted to see that kind of performance.
Yeah, if you're going to have that kind of return on ad spend, I mean, it costs a business, right? You have to spend money to make money.
Right.
You have to choose effectively. I'm sure it also, in some cases, has to do with who the audience is. I mean, Star Wars fans; those are diehard fans that are known to wait in line for many things, and that's probably a really good use case. Do you find that some of it is generational? That it has to do with different demographics like age or things of that nature? That younger shoppers do better with this form of communication and marketing and such, or are there other breakdowns that you've seen in the data over time?
I think that's what's been actually so fascinating, or what is so fascinating about the SMS channel. It's fairly demographic agnostic. In fact, I would argue, and when you look at the data, this proves it. Older, quote unquote, shoppers, let's say even 60, up to 65 years old, know how to use SMS probably more than email. It's very intuitive. The actions are less, right? It's reply and click and send. So it's very effective that way. That said, as we think about the shift to mobile as well, I think that's what's so exciting about message commerce in general. We think about social media. I personally, this is my little guilty pleasure, but I spend about 30 minutes on TikTok a day when I'm trying to wind down from the day. These channels are obviously where Gen Z is living. And when you think about SMS, it actually integrates very well with these ecosystems. So, for example, we have a feature called Instagram Swipe Up, where you can convert a portion of your Instagram audience into SMS subscribers. And the advantage of that is, yes, Instagram has its own shopping tools where you're buying at the time of discovery. You may not be ready to purchase at that time. If you can convert someone to an SMS subscriber, I think we're working on this data. It's something that I'm very passionate about, but I believe that the LTV of an SMS subscriber versus an email subscriber or even an Instagram follower is massively higher than any other channel. So you have this kind of engaged customer that will hear about future product updates in real time. And that's the other aspect of the Gen Z culture. It's product drops. We've seen this before with Supreme doing it so well. We're going to release it at midnight and it's going to go stock out in 5 minutes. Perfect channel SMS, universal. You don't have to be in the app. You're going to get the text and click to buy. You're done in 1 or 2 steps.
Sure. And a lot of great online retailers, whether it's sneakers or comic books or, things that tie to events and what have it. There's, Black Friday and Cyber Monday and, and that whole time of year, knowing when's that new, whatever it may, game console, that new PlayStation becoming available or this or that getting in stock. You really want to get that message in a way that you're going to see it. You're going to be able to react to it. I think that there are those cases where people would prefer that, and even some of the shipping companies like UPS now gives me the option. Do I want an email or a text message giving me updates on where that package is? They know I want to know. Yeah. Maybe I don't want to, I'm not so crazy about every single package, but I don't know, maybe that new computer that's on the way, that's something I'm tracking. These are things that are becoming more and more important to be able to, be competitive and keep up. So would you say that the number one reason that merchants haven't been leveraging SMS to its fullest in the past is mainly out of fear that they weren't sure that they could do it in a way that wouldn't upset shoppers? Or is it the additional expense or, that they didn't have the right resource, that they already felt overwhelmed with email? What is it that's stopping them? And, is there sort of that entry level where if they've got X amount of online revenue already or X amount of customers or orders or something, that they should really be thinking about it, that they should at least be evaluating it and understanding where does it fall in their roadmap as a company?
I think you answered your own question perfectly. It's definitely all 3 of those reasons. So if we were to summarize, 1, it's the additional just kind of friction on launching a new channel. It feels overwhelming. You need resources to launch a new channel. 2, it's just the cost. There's this, and I think when you look at it on an ROAS perspective, that answers itself. But in general, you have this marginal cost of delivery. Even if, platforms like Voyage and others, we obviously have our margin in our service, but even if you were to work directly with AT&T, which very few, actually no companies do, they usually go through a CPaaS like Twilio, there's going to be carriers charging fees for it. And we're in an oligopoly, of course, of carriers. And so that you can't scale that away. And so there's always going to be a marginal cost to SMS, unlike email that is, on the web. So that is definitely number 2. And then number 3 is the spam thing that we talked about before. And I think it's our part of our job as, an SMS platform to educate the market that there are actually very strong ways that you can engage your customer base and they want to hear from you this way, assuming that you use segmentation the right way, assuming that you use personalization the right way and conversational the right way. So I think it's probably historical things that are definitely addressable. I would also argue that very few brands could not benefit from SMS, if I said that the right way. But basically, every brand can use SMS in some way. It may be that some brands are focused on a specific component or use case a little bit more. So, for example, a small AOV brand, maybe small F&B where the AOV is kind of low, you're still going to get your ROAS on drips. So, like a high intent add to cart, the ROAS is going to work because you already have intent on that customer. So that may be the primary focus of that SMS program.
Well, and
high AOV.
You hope if they have a low AOV, a low average order value, that those shoppers are going to be repeat shoppers, because otherwise it's tough to stay in business if you're selling $10, $20 carts. Those are the orders you're taking in, that you really better hope that those folks are coming back. So and they don't often come back on their own. You have to keep them involved. You have to nurture that. So, I'm with that. I think that's almost, in some cases, more important than the big ticket items, where, you're, I often use, mattresses as the example, so you sell them the mattress. Are they going to, those last a long time, hopefully. Maybe you could sell them some sheets, some pillows, some accoutrement to go with it. But you've really sold your big ticket item at that point. Then you've got to get creative if you want to do any more with it. So, if you can do anything with any kind of abandonment, anything to keep them in the sales funnel is gold.
Absolutely. I agree. And talking about the high AOV side, so luxury, it's not, it's definitely not the core average client. I would say apparel works incredibly well with SMS, F&B, a lot of sub verticals. But let's take jewelry, for example. The typical sales cycle on that can be either longer or it's super personalized. And that's where we see this vision of definitely conversational, but how can we create very personalized messaging to get that prospective client over the hump? And that's what SMS enables you to do. Whether it's literally real-time human engagement or what we call semi-automated engagement, where we know the profile of the customer, we know what they're interested in. How can we automate those, kind of re-engagement messages to them? It works, as well as just brand awareness. So really, it's hard for me to think of a brand or a use case where SMS isn't going to be effective in some way.
And it may not always be about the immediate sale, so
Correct.
I don't care whether you're, I'll think automotive for a second, whether you're Jeep or Harley Davidson, you've got back to, diehard customers. You've got folks that will show up for, for all kinds of events and things locally that will turn out with other folks that are really, fans and supporters of the brand, that are owners of the product lines. And, you'll get, other folks that really, that are buying from Tom's Shoes or Patagonia or other companies that do a lot of, a lot of good public works and things, and that they've got lots of content that will keep people interested and engaged with the brand as well. Sometimes it's about making sure that when it is time for the next purchase, that you're top of mind. And, it's not always about that immediate, but if you have that data to understand, to segment based on their location, based on their purchasing history, based on other things, to hit them with the right messages and not just, send your entire customer database the exact same, the same communication, you can do something special with it. So I think that we'll probably see more of that heading into e-commerce as we go. I can think of very few brands that I know that are doing that particularly well, specifically through SMS. But I know you mentioned the Star Wars case study for those products hitting with a particular merchant. Do you have any other favorites that come to mind? Any really, merchants that are doing this really well, or campaigns that have gone better than someone might have expected?
Yeah, I think we're seeing a lot. This is kind of a generalized case study, but we have one client in particular who's seeing 1,000x ROAS on this. Is the quiz-based kind of flows we're seeing nowadays, where it's personalized. You fill out your variables, and then you get a personalized results. It almost seems trivial, but with Voyage, you can send a follow-up message with that personalized kind of quiz results with the custom flow that goes on the website, and it feels very connected and personalized. And when you have that final call to action, here's your product that's personalized based on your quiz, we're seeing literally that client seeing 1,000x ROAS on that drip.
Wow.
So that's just an autopilot for them. They couldn't achieve this on other systems, or they could, but the way you can do it with Voyage is very much set up where you can do it in minutes to set it up. And that's kind of what we try to prioritize, is really this flexibility, ingesting data from any source, kind of this quote unquote source agnosticism or platform agnosticism. We're not just Shopify only. We're very thoughtful about BigCommerce, Magento, custom tech stacks, any CRM. That's where we see really exciting kind of case studies and use cases. The other one is another client that sells candles. I want to keep it anonymous, although I'm sure they'd be happy if I'm giving them a shout out. But they've done a really good job recently exploring our conversational commerce feature, and the amount of customer delight they're creating, where someone abandons a cart and they're reaching out to say, hey, how can we help you? It's just incredible, the kind of responses we're getting. And as a marketer, what KPI does that hit? Of course, it's about KPIs and metrics, but we firmly know that we're increasing customer NPS and that loyalty to the brand. Another thing this client's doing very well is the creatives that we actually help with our clients. We help design for our clients on their top of funnel list building. On that alone, I think 50% of their SMS revenues come from just that design modal that's on brand. And we've A/B tested iterations and iterations because every little impact can mean a driver of 6 figures in revenue for our client. So that's something that we really believe in is how do we design custom, very relevant campaigning based on your brand and your strategy and what your goals are. And the creativity and kind of the customization that we believe in is definitely driven significant results.
That's interesting. I got flashbacks from a few of our previous episodes just now. One of them that came to mind, we talked about sending personalized videos. And obviously, the video has to be sent through a medium. I'm sure SMS would be a great one, but the ability to be there, with the shopper, letting them see you packing up the order, or thanking them for it and asking them for review, things like that, adding that personal touch, tremendous responses. And the same thing, we had another episode a few months back where we looked at, as opposed to trying to have AI figure out everything about the shopper, giving them that quiz on the website and just asking them some relevant questions so that you knew what products they'd be interested in. And, how simple is that? And that for a lot of types of products, imagine, beauty products. But that's just an example. There are lots of kinds that the shopper will tell you. In automotive, they'll tell you what kind of car that they have so that you can pair them with products that are going to match. They don't want to be looking at 100,000 SKUs in your website. They want to be looking at the 500 that are applicable. So I think that some of these things, folks just haven't necessarily thought about how to apply it to their industry or to their website, but that there are a lot of great opportunities to then take that data and, then it's about stage 2. It's about how do you utilize it? Well, if you just get stuck in their email box where they're not opening anything, you may not see the ROAS. The return on that effort may not be exactly what you're looking for. I'm going to touch on something though that I'll go back to something else that you said. You mentioned how you integrate with Magento and BigCommerce and Shopify and this, that, and the other. I had noticed when I was doing a little research before today's taping, you've got a lot of integrations with other systems above and beyond the e-commerce platforms. And I'm a partnership guy, so I'm taking note of what does your ecosystem look like? And I noticed companies like Gorgeous and Recharge and Just Uno and Privy and even folks like Klaviyo that have that email channel done pretty well and may even touch on some of the text messaging, but don't necessarily compete with everything that you're able to bring to the table with that. How important do you see those things? I would imagine for platforms like Recharge, where you're dealing with folks that have recurring subscriptions, or Gorgeous, where maybe they're dealing with some kind of customer service issues or other things. Is it really about unifying the communications through the channel so that the shoppers are getting everything through this one channel cohesively? What is the major goal of building out the partner ecosystem that you've been working on?
Yeah, we firmly believe in an open ecosystem, kind of open API philosophy. And I think there's a couple of themes that come across, maybe a few. It's how do we ingest data from kind of any source so that you can better segment and personalize your messaging? And also, how can you streamline the communication on one thread with the customer? So let's take an example like Gorgeous, which is a customer service platform. Suppose a text shopper who received a campaign places an order and then they say something like, "Where's my order?" You could do that through our Voyage panel, but we also integrate. Suppose you want your kind of main source to be Gorgeous. we actually create a ticket in that system via text that connects you to an agent, where the agent can respond from Gorgeous, but the response comes through that same phone number. So you have this cohesive experience on one platform. The other side I talked about was data. So we really think of data in two flavors. One is events, so something a user did, and an attribute, something about a user. Both of those are true with these integrations. So whether it's a CDP, let's just say a custom CRM that we can integrate with because of our API structure, we're bringing in custom attributes that you can either pull into the messaging itself, like hi, first name, something more clever than that. We have a dog company, pet food company that's a specific species of breed of dog, not species, breed of dog where you can pull that into the messaging. So that's very powerful. We can kind of increase this personalization, but also triggering messaging as well. So the drip side, for example, if someone signed up to be a recharge subscriber, allowing them to schedule a drip that notifies them of an upcoming order and then including a link to manage their subscription. The other use case I love is product reviews. So right now we have integrations with a couple of product review platforms, post-purchase scheduling a drip, let's say 3 days after, how would you rate this product, and sending them to a link. The eventual goal in the very near-term future is even collecting that review via text, so you don't even have to go back to the platform, storing it on the platform, creating an incentive loop that way for that review. But really the opportunities are endless, and it's all about creating this very seamless customer experience that's very relevant for the customer as well.
It's interesting. And, as you're talking a little bit about recharge and notifying the shopper before that renewal, before the subscription for, let's say, that month of supplements or whatever it might be, triggers that they get that notification, that advanced warning. Let's say, that we're going to be shipping out this month's order, whatever, gift of the month club, one of those, box things, whatever it might be. One of the biggest failures that I've seen from some of those subscription companies is making it hard to cancel or pause or, hey, look, I'm going to be traveling this month. I don't need that right now. I'm not even going to be here for it, that kind of thing. Because everybody just calls the credit card company and files some form of, stop, charge back, et cetera. And at that point, these merchants always get dinged, and it winds up costing them more and more, not just in fees, but upfront fees for chargebacks and things, but costs them more because they become a higher risk merchant over time. And so, it's always surprising how some of these things that you had a good customer, you could have left on reasonable terms, but everything went kablooey at the last minute. You want to be that company that's that people feel good about, that they trust, that they want to recommend, that they want to come back to, that makes everything quick and easy. I like that idea of that one string of, you get the text message that says here, the order is shipped, here's your tracking number. And then when it doesn't show up, you could just write back to that same message. And, it's not coming from, no reply at whatever email like normal. And you've got to jump through hoops to figure out how to context, but it's going to go right into Gorgeous or whatever their ticket system is, whatever their customer relationship management software is. It's a nice thought about how we can all work together and bring a little bit of humanity back into the process. So, we've talked about a lot of ways that you can do things right. I'm sure that you've talked to merchants and seen merchants that have failed at this. Do you have any thoughts around that? Have you seen any patterns where merchants did this poorly? I'll say, to make it a little bit harder, above and beyond simply just sending out too many texts or batch and blast, but maybe they underutilized the platform, or they weren't doing some other things in particular more that. Where is it that a lot of people that have tried SMS, in your opinion, have failed so far, have come up short?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. Treating SMS like email, which I guess kind of fits your theme of overblasting maybe, but I think understanding it as a different channel and the intimacy of it. It's really investing in even the top of funnel seriousness, so that welcome flow. Ultimately, you can't text numbers that you don't have. And so we always harp on this, create your maximum addressable audience, and then you can segment later and target later. But first, just kind of get your net wide, and that's kind of the goal there. So just really getting that down, and that really starts, the primary way is really that modal, where you're giving the user the option to go either SMS only or SMS or email. But that's very important. I would say setting up your drips, so like your high intent browse abandoned cart. If you don't get those activated, you're basically going to see lower ROAS than you possibly would, which creates this feedback loop of SMS is working when I see 10 plus X ROAS at a baseline. So those are the few common themes I would say, and I would say it's the responsibility. At the same time, it's the responsibility of us as the platform. And this is something that definitely drives the way we both design the product as well as our service model. It's how to educate the client specific to their vertical and their business. And I think that's what's lacking a little bit in the market right now. It's the specificity of, okay, this is your brand. This is a very specific brand. You may have different goals. You have a different products. How do we cultivate your SMS program specific to your goals? And through product design, of course, we want to encourage good behavior. So you alluded to, yes, we're building tools to basically reduce the friction for a customer to take an action they likely want to do. Ultimately, it's up to the brand on whether they want to, make that possible. So the brand has to schedule the drip to say you can cancel your subscription. It's up to the brand, it's their choice, but it's our job. We see it as our job to encourage the brand to be as successful as possible based on what we've seen otherwise. So I think it's just scaling these best practices with the flexibility that's possible, but really, understanding that it's not one flavor fits all for SMS programs, and taking advantage of everything that there is in an SMS platform, which is really a lot.
That's interesting. I guess one of the challenges that you've suggested is that, everyone that's already up and running, they come to the table with an email list, but they might not have opt-in data to be able to send SMS messages. And so they're just going to have to, continue to build that campaign, build that practice. And so there's a bit of a ramp up, I imagine. Have you actually run into any merchants that have had issues with the opposite of maybe not waiting and abusing data a bit? Have you seen anyone, in any way dinged or, get a bit of a black eye because they didn't follow, the rules in this case?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. It's something we take very seriously. So in general, one thing we really, internally take seriously and think is a differentiator is we really think of ourselves or want to be a partner to the company and the brand, not just a tool. So with that, while the brand is ultimately taking the compliance risk for, the just regulatory landscape, we take it seriously that we're protecting the brand from misusing the SMS channel. And so how we do that literally is we have safeguards in the product where, for example, you can't send a text off hours. We automatically enable what's called double opt-in for certain list building campaigns, so you're not at risk of violating the rules. So we've really prioritized our compliance program, and it is a big deal because if a brand, for example, sends a message at 2 a.m. by accident, they can get charged up to $1,500 per text. So imagine sending that to a 100,000 subscriber list, and there is historical precedence for this.
That would be a really bad day for a marketer.
Yeah, that's right. And all it takes is one click. But obviously, you want a platform that takes compliance seriously. I would say it's gotten better in terms of the crackdown on these platforms. But I was surprised a year ago even to see some SMS tools which kind of were very laissez-faire about this. And maybe the brand doesn't know because they see the ROIS and obviously it's attractive to generate revenue, but it's on the industry and the marketing technology side, in my opinion, to really protect the brand from misusing the channel in a non-compliant way. Another example we do is this is a trade-off, of course, but if someone switches over from another platform, we need to validate the list. Again, it's not you can't just self-upload it. We need to look through it, understand where it came from. Because we're protecting the brand. Because if it's numbers that were not properly opted in with the right consent and messaging, we're not going to really allow that, because it's, obviously the brand's going to absorb the penalty, but we know it's in their best interests, and we don't want to create any sort of risk or liability for them.
Interesting. So there's some landmines to the left and right. You've paved a path, and you've put up some fences and some safety rails and things to make sure that that no one goes for a stroll, tries to have a picnic among the landmines. I've seen some brands take on more risk than I would have ever liked when it comes to security and other things. That marketing is often somewhere where they're more adventurous, where they want to invest more heavily and be cutting edge. That's somewhere where they're going to get a return on their spend. Security is more of cost of business, so there are those kinds of areas that sometimes get left behind. And there's the in between. I wind up having a lot of conversations about loading speed optimization, what have you, which absolutely impacts conversion rates and impacts, even your ability to drive certain traffic in terms of your SEO rankings and your Google ads and other places that you're driving traffic from that are going to use your loading speed as part of their algorithm. But, getting that message across in a way that, look, you can spend X to get Y, and you're going to be, again, delighting your shoppers and making them happier and providing better experiences, and you're going to be all the better for it. I think, a lot of the challenge is always that folks in e-commerce are pulled in a lot of different directions. There's a lot of moving parts. And so just getting them to really stop, take notice of this is an opportunity here to really operate effectively, efficiently, to scale and grow. And this is going to be, this should be part of the 1 year, the 5-year plan. Hard to plan 5 years out in tech, but this is something that we see being important for our future. I would imagine that a lot of folks, if they were stacking up the marketing and communications end of the deck, that SMS would absolutely make sense in that respect. Rip, you've been really generous with your time today. Before we wrap it up for the day, any final words of wisdom? Anything that you want to impart on our listeners that we haven't touched on yet?
I really appreciate the time. It's been so fun, Robert. And I think you again summarized kind of the broader theme about how we think about the world, which is SMS. Yes, it's a channel, but this is a key part of mobile strategy. And we see the world continue to evolve to this mobile environment. And like I said, at Voyage, it's not only about how do we leverage SMS marketing, it's really how do we move along with the future to provide an outlet for customers to engage brands the way they want to. And our hypothesis that's been proven over and over again is customers want to engage brands in various ways through messaging channels. And really, we're just scratching the surface in terms of innovation in this channel, what we can do with personalized product recommendations through predictive targeting on when a person wants to hear about something. That's really not even in the market yet. And that's what we're building and so excited about at Voyage. So that's, what drives us every day. We're a product-driven company that loves listening to our clients and shapes our roadmap. And we're just very excited for the future and how commerce is going to evolve online and offline.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for joining today. For our listeners and viewers, as always, thanks for tuning in. We'll have more great content like this for you soon. In the meantime, stay safe, stay healthy, and happy selling out there.